Hello out there. I wanted to make one of my few videos. I wanted to make a brief comment on this gentleman here. Um, his handle is, okay, I have his name here. It's The Real Merkabah. The Real Merkabah on YouTube. Seems to have a lot of people following him. But, I have so much to say that I can only do a really rudimentary, a very quick, brief commentary on here, and just to kind of let people know that I'm going to be doing another video on really addressing some of the points that he made concerning or against Christianity and biblical points in the Bible. He really goes after, apparently I just saw maybe like one or two of his videos, and he's a really charged anti-Christian doctrine YouTube page, an individual. And there's no hate there. There's a lot of people doing what he's doing subtly, and people that hate Christ and don't do what he's doing and live in the shadows. But you have to respect the man for his conviction and for his tenacity into looking into the scriptures, and I respect him for that. But my feedback today is primarily going to be to get people to have an understanding that there are many people like this individual. And in bottom line, because I don't have a lot of time, and I don't have time to sit down and give a good critique of what of the finer points that he brought out. But I will tell you that he discussed a number of things, and I noticed that a lot of the stuff that he believes is in like the social gospel. He believes a lot on the unfairness, the treatments of, African Americans and in the United States and all that stuff. The young man has a lot of wisdom. He has a lot of understanding. He has a lot of points, but a lot of what he has is really not on point. It's popular in what he's thinking, but it's not correct. It's not a correct. It's something that's kind of like a wildfire, where you've got people in the hood or in certain respective locations, and they tend to all believe the same. Why? Because the fire is going to spread. Information spreads really quickly, especially incendiary information. And if it's true information, it'll spread, and that's a positive thing. And if it's ignorant, it's also going to spread, but it spreads. Okay? So, I believe that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. I believe that the Bible, when you approach the Bible, you have to approach the Bible with submission and understanding that if these claims are true, if the claims in the Bible are true, then you have to look to it not through man's wisdom, but what God has allowed your human wisdom to derive from the words that he is passing on to you in the Bible. And so later on in the coming days, maybe in maybe about a week from now, I'm going to post the finer points that he mentioned concerning the scriptures that he plugged out and the deceptions that he says are out there in Christianity. But I will say one more thing, that you cannot learn biblical doctrine. Let's say if I want to learn about Muslims, Islam, I'm going to go directly to an imam. If I want to learn about Christianity, I'm going to go to a theologian. If I'm going to learn any respective field, you have to go to the people who believe in that. And then you read the book, and then you put two and two together. Now that is a researcher. But if you're a skeptic, and you're a freestyling skeptic, and you're going to read the Bible, and you're presuppositions are already to deny what you see, okay? Then and say if you have some hatred in your heart and you're reading the Bible, then everything that says about love you're going to reject. Okay? If you're a person that doesn't believe in purity, if you're a person who's immoral and very lustful, when you read about the Bible that you have to be pure, I mean, that's how humans are. You're going to cut out those areas of the Bible where it says you have to be pure. Okay? So a lot of people go into the scriptures and they think it's just a matter of reading the scriptures. But you have to submit to what you believe. If the claims of the scriptures are correct, then you have to give it some respect. You see what I'm saying? If the claims of the scriptures are correct, then you've got to give the scriptures some respect. Okay? And this gentleman says he speaks well. Sometimes it seems like he speaks well of the Bible, but then he goes against what the Bible's teaching. Now, you have to understand that you've got over 40 authors that are talking about this creator God, and they all have the same thing in common. He makes it seem like it's this big, vast conspiracy. He says that it's all centered in Rome, but he doesn't realize that what he's saying, he's shooting himself in the foot, because the Bible speaks against the attributes that we see in Rome. It speaks about humility. Rome is not humble. It speaks about royalty. The Bible speaks about royalty only in heaven, not on earth. It speaks about many things that in opposition to what Rome is. So why would Rome create something that is against itself? Jesus himself said that if Satan cast out Satan, then how can his kingdom stand? Okay, so we read the scriptures, okay, in submission and understanding that if this is a revelation of God, then let me approach it in reverence. If you're really, Jesus says, if you're hungry and you're thirsting for the truth, he says, come to me. He says, follow me. Okay, and because you misunderstand doctrines, and you misunderstand the contextual situations that are going on in there, the best way to understand the Bible is through the Bible itself. All right? Now, one of the many things that he brought up, he talked about that the disciples stated that you will not taste death, okay, until this generation is over. Okay, first of all, he was talking about the transfiguration, that some of you, he said, will not taste death until you see the kingdom of heaven. And sure enough, when he took James, John, and Peter up into the mountain, he showed them the heavenly bodies coming down, the angels ascending and descending. And they saw a vision of Christ, of heaven, they saw up in the mountain. Okay? So that's what he was referring to. All right? To address one of the many things that my friend brought up in his YouTube video. He says, and if you notice, he says Elijah is going to come in the last days. Well, if Elijah presented himself on the mountain in the transfiguration with Moses, that's what he was referring to. And in other places in the Bible, it talks about that the spirit of Elijah was within John the Baptist. John the Baptist was in the last days. Not only that, but even today you'll find that a lot of people debate how many years is a generation. Okay, some people say 40, some people say 70. To this day, scholars are not sure exactly what is really a generation, what is actually entailed. Most people land on 40 years, but that's still something that's still debated. However, just like you see the prophecies in the Old Testament, okay, you see how Jesus spoke to the Pharisees. He says that it's in me, in those scriptures, that they talks about me. He's talking about their Old Testament writings regarding what the prophets wrote about him. The Jews in those days couldn't see it. because they did not have eyes to see and ears to hear. Okay? And so he was telling them that, okay, when Isaiah 53 was talking about a servant coming to die on the cross, who was he referring to? Even atheists, when you ask them, who does this sound like it's referring to? Even they say it sounds like they're speaking of Christ. Why, this is the same thing that happened. All of those things that were fulfilled, okay, in Christ's coming. The same thing he was talking about in Matthew 10. Because when he sent out the disciples 2 and 2, he was talking about, okay, these things were going to happen, but they were not arrested at that time. Okay? 2,000 years later, we're reading these scriptures that were preserved for 2,000 years. Now, ask me one question. Answer one question. Why do we still have written documents, okay, from antiquity, from so long ago, over 2,000 years ago, or rather close to 2,000 years ago, of Christ saying this? It's because the words were preserved. Not only was it reflective of the disciples of what they were going to deal with after Christ left them. Okay, they were going to be persecuted, but the same persecutions are happening today in various countries. People are coming before courts. People are being put to death. People are hating because of his name. We see all of these things happening today. Now, I have a lot to say about this, a lot more to say about this, and I really don't want to disrespect the YouTuber by not pointing out specifically. I wrote down on a piece of paper, in an index card, the finer points that he brought up. But as I went through them, I listed them, and trust me, people, there are more than enough answers. However, if you don't want to believe those answers, that's something else. But now, isn't the whole gospel about believing? Okay? Isn't that what it's all about? Whether you read these scriptures and whether you want to believe them or not. I mean, we've got millions of followers. This gentleman makes it seem like if every single one of them just doesn't know their Bible. Dude, there are people dying for what they believe. There are people that are seeing what's going on, what happened 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and it's still happening today. They have their minds made up because of the words of Christ, because of the claims of Christ. He said he's the Son, he's the essence of the eternal Father. Okay, these people are allowing themselves, they can go freely, okay, or they can convert to any other nonsense religion, but they're deciding not to, and to lose their lives for something. What are they doing that for? Would you do that? If somebody came to you and said you have to believe that clowns rule the earth, and they were putting a gun to you, you, my friend, would say, I believe in clowns. Okay? You say, I'll say I believe in this nonsense. Well, isn't that how they believe? You know, somebody puts a gun to your head. Why would they believe so much? Why? Because love conquers, and Christ is the vision of that love. Okay? And so it boils down to this. There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it's the way to death. Okay? The Bible is wall to wall. The prophets, the disciples, it's all coherent. And sure, we jump from passage to passage to make a point. And if anything, that shows even more consistency. Because if you can show a consistency between the prophets and the disciples, and show the consistency between what's going on in the world today, how much more airtight does that not make the narrative of the scriptures? Jesus Christ says, I'm telling you these things ahead of time, so when they happen, your faith will be strengthened. How much more are we strengthened by things that we see that someone warned us of? Someone tells us, well, this is what's going to happen. And when it does come to pass, that's what prophecy is all about. When prophecy comes to pass, people say, whoa, we really believe that prophet. Okay? So there's more to say. God bless all of you. I pray that this gentleman will reconsider the way he interprets the scriptures. But trust me, it's all a perspective. It's all perspective. If Dawkins reads you the Bible, he's going to give you his perspective, and he's going to put his twist on it. But ultimately, we have to decide what makes sense to us. And sometimes, like the gentleman said, you have to kind of do additional research. Research the early church. What did they believe in? Research the scriptures, the Old Testament, the New Testament, various books. What did this person believe? What did that person believe? What did extra biblical sources even sometimes. Go into the skeptics and see what they wrote. Okay? There's a lot of evidence in there, and there's a lot of evidence to believe and a lot of evidence to deny. But it's all supposition. It's all what you come to the table already willing and deciding to believe. Like Christ says, if you're truly thirsty, if you're truly hungry, you will come to the truth. You will come to his truth. You'll believe in his claims. You'll decide, okay, I do believe what he's saying. And based on what he's saying. Listen to the arguments. And I see this gentleman's other YouTube videos, and it seems like, he's atheistic, perhaps. I only saw maybe one or two of his videos. I could be wrong. But what the situation is, it seems like the answer to him and many others like him are that, poor people have to struggle. They're treading on the colored person. I'm from the hood myself. I come from a hood. I've seen things myself. I've seen how people treat. But man is evil. Evil happens in all cultures, in all nations. It's the history of the world. We don't have a good. If we want to go search utopia in history, we're going to have a hard time finding it. Okay, because utopia does not exist. Okay, it doesn't. What we do have is nation conquering nation, persecution, killing, beheadings, murdering. That's the story of life. Okay? The only time you have peace is when people are stopping to reload. Okay, so God bless. Look out for my next video on here, and we'll talk soon in Jesus' name. Bye.